Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. He joins us here in the studio, Mr. Wale Smato-Yunide. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having us once again.
Is this policy a bittersweet pill for NECA, or it's yay or nay?
Well, maybe not for NECA, basically. Really, the reality is this. Every policy will always be a bittersweet. Will come with a bittersweet context. It depends on which side of the divide that you find yourself. But on the long run, the greater good should influence whether we stick to that policy or whether we don't stick to that policy. And we think at the organized private sector, one of our colleagues, Man, has already made a statement, and we think also that it is for the greater good, for our country. Looking at our antecedents, looking at the realities of import duties. When you impose import duties, what exactly are you trying to achieve? If you take care of the variables, there are a bit of variables surrounding every policy. If you don't take care of those variables, the bitterness becomes much more pronounced. People can manipulate a good policy to achieve different objectives from the same objective that you have. So while you are coming up with that policy, you have to take care of those variables so that the whole good intention doesn't come out negative.
Well, one of the primary constraints a number of people have indicated is the likelihood of the fact that operating costs for employers is likely to be directly affected in the immediate term. But then there's also the question of, okay, make short-term pain for long-term gain. How short is short? How long is long? Those are constraints, aren't they?
You can't from experience, in 2023, when the president came in, I think 2023, and he made the pronouncement of subsidies gone, and a lot of uproar about subsidies gone. Why now? Why so sudden? If you look at the story of subsidy removals, successive governments from 1999, if I'm correct, that have tried to create a process towards removal. They announce, there's protest, people are called to the table to negotiate, prices are increased a bit, people receive different kind of rules to play within the context of palliatives to reduce subsidy. Then we come back to the system again. So there's never been a successful attempt to remove subsidy. So for us, when the issue of subsidy gone, so we needed a shock to take us away from that tardiness. So for this particular policy, there will always be a gestation period, and that's why I said it is always good for you, before you come up with those policies, think of what are the consequences around this. It is tariff on imported fuel, not local production. And what is expected is government will have done its permutation to say, okay, in the context of the local context, what do we have? What is the Dangote refinery giving us in the context of our immediate needs? What will the modular refineries that you have around, what can they give us in the context of our need? Can these refineries meet 80% threshold of our needs daily? If they can meet 80% threshold or 85% threshold of your need, then you don't need to import, because the consequences of importation far outweighs the benefits or the risk of the shortage that you have.
Mr. Onyerinde, let's speak English here. Let's break it down for our viewers in terms of, because you have said that every policy will have its bitter side and its sweet side. I think that for a lot of people, they might understand long-term what the sweet side will be. But in the short term, what is the bitter side that your constituency is looking at?
Now, the concern that many have raised is that if you without adequate local supply and you impose tariff on importation, it invariably increases the price of the imports. And because businesses or individuals will be compelled to buy fuel, because really diesel, petrol, the consumption is not really, it's almost inelastic, because you need diesel, you need fuel to power your car, you need diesel to power your generator. So the consumption, the demand is not totally, is not inelastic. So the concern is if you don't deal with the local supply, adequate local supply, then you leave room for increase in prices because those that we import will naturally sell at the price to break even. So those are basically the concern. And also the concern is that, look, if you don't deal with the context of local supply, if you don't have guarantees about local supply, then you have opened the market for distortions, that even those that are supplying locally, that are not supposed to increase prices, they will probably, because they also want to be competitive and match those that are importing, they also will be in a position to increase the prices. So those are the critical concerns of stakeholders. But as I said, once you deal with those variables of sufficient local production, then anybody can import. Just pay the import duty.
Where have you been able to raise these concerns, at least to the hearing of government? And if they have heard, is anything being done about it?
Now, I think last week the president gave the approval about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not wrong, and the OPS has done its own bit of analysis to see what exactly, in the context of now, how will this take us? And the OPS is also going beyond the issue of petrol and diesel, because in the real sense of it, to also ramp up production in the manufacturing sector, in the real sector, and make it to grow, this kind of policy we also need to be moved to the real sector itself. Because why do we have to import the things that we can produce? Because it has consequences on forex, it has consequences on so many parts of our economic trajectory. So we are going beyond the issue of the petrol and diesel. That look, everything that we have the potential to produce, government should, within in a short while, also get stakeholders together. Let's discuss it and let's put in import duties on this product, provided as a caveat, provided we have made sufficient arrangements for local production to meet our needs. If we have to give a 1-year moratorium or 2-year moratorium for businesses to backward integrate sufficiently, so that the things that they usually import, we create opportunities for those in the local market to be able to produce those goods, so that the tendency to import will be less.
But the challenge remains, okay, maybe I should ask it this way. From what you know, and from what your association and the OPS is aware of, does Nigeria, as at today, November 7, 2025, have the capacity to be self-sustaining in energy production?
The question is neither here nor there, and I'll give you an example. The Dangote refinery will tell you, if they come out and say they have the supply, the capacity to supply our consumption, at the point there was contention about how many liters we actually consume on a daily basis. NNPC has its own figures, other stakeholders have their own figure. There has not been a unified agreement as per this is actually the amount of liters that we consume per day. And because we don't have access to those critical information that are industry information, then it becomes difficult to tell you definitively that yes, this combined with Dangote refinery, the modular refinery, combined, we can meet our needs. That's quite difficult. But we think government should have those information, because those are the information that will have fed into this decision to say, look, this is what we are doing at this time, and this is the direction that the policy is going. But do we need it? Beyond the timing, do we need such policy now? If America is, if US is coming up with policies, a developed nation coming up with policies to protect its local industries, I think we don't have much of excuse to protect our local industries.
Do you foresee a fresh round of wage-related pressure from labor unions as a result of this? Because you've not been able to tell us how short is short, how long is long. So if the short is not as short as we anticipate, and rising living costs increase, do you foresee a situation where labor unions can begin to push for increased revenue?
The context of when people say the cost of living will balloon, the cost of doing business will balloon, I think it's a bit misleading, Because if you look at it from the context of you don't have the capacity, if what we have currently is just the Kaduna, Port Harcourt, Warri refinery that have been moribund for many years. And the question we've stopped asking is, why are those refineries not working? Why every time there is a policy or definitive action to take us away from that past, there's always resistance. I think those are crazy questions which you ask. But we look at it directly from the perspective of creating jobs. Now, if you ramp up in the short term, as you said, there might be pains. And you can't run away from those pains.
Mr.
That's the reality of it.
Do you foresee a fresh round of wage-related pressure?
There's no reason for that conversation about wage-related pressure. Where is it coming from? The more the local refineries ramp up production, the more they ramp up their capacity to produce, the more their ability to sell, the more productive the business will be, the more enhanced their capacity to expand. So as the business improves, then the capacity of the business to pay more wages also improves. As the business expands, local production expands. And let's look at it not only from the context of the refinery itself, the whole business in the value chain. So as that refinery is increasing production, is expanding its capacity, all the businesses in the value chain also continue to increase, and job creation also comes in. So the context of, if we focus on the issue of increase in cost of living, on the issue of salary pressures, then we will have basically lost the plot.
So what exactly is the standpoint of NECA at this point? How do they see this policy? How do you see it affecting your members?
We support the policy of the 15% tariff on imported petroleum products, not on
locally produced.
Imported. I think we have to be clear on imported petroleum products. If the 15%, and I'm being careful with my words now, if the 15% tariff on imported petrol is the punishment we have to bear for collectively, because we're all conspirators, both the press, both the operators in the oil and gas, we're all conspirators in making those 4 refineries not working. We're all conspirators in having crude oil.
I don't know how the press is involved in this. And I don't know when you mentioned the press first.
Having crude oil.
Yes.
We have crude oil, and we have to export crude to import. If that is the penalty we have to pay for our recklessness, I think it's the direction for us to go.
Well, so your members are happy to bear the 15% tariff increase, because you have also given some conditionalities. You have said that there needs to be monitoring of what exactly this policy is about.
Monitoring of what is happening, and create the environment to ramp up local production, basically.
So is that being done? Are you being given that assurance?
It's part of the engagement we're having with government, that you have to create these opportunities so that this seemingly good policy doesn't turn to an albatross for us.
All right, well, we have to thank you, Mr. Wale Smart, here in the DG of NECA, and keep our eye on that ball, because January is how many weeks away now? Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having us once again.